kick off this conversation. So how did I meet this lovely servant leader, Jeff Shafer? So my colleague was at a conference last year, and it was a conference on impact. And I think she was at a table, and had bumped into someone, and she said, "Oh my God, this man is like on fire for impact in Africa. In particular, his brother lives there, and they're powering up thousands, hundreds of thousands of homes, and they're doing so much social good. You've got to meet him. As a matter of fact, not only do you need to meet him, we need to go to Africa with him." I'm like, huh? And so she got me so pumped up and fired up. And of course, Africa for me is one of my favorite places to visit in the world. And so it didn't take too much convincing for me to join Jeff and my colleagues on a trip to beautiful Rwanda. We also went to Kenya. And I know there's projects that you also have in South Africa and Uganda. We'll talk about that. But thank you so much for joining me today. I know we're going to get into this conversation. So Jeff, how did you get into this type of work?
Yeah, so the journey goes back a ways, and before I start, I wear kind of two hats today. One is the CEO of Common Good Capital, which I'll touch on briefly, and then I am a partner in Fortis Green. But let me take you back about 11 years ago. I was running part of a firm. I was one of the executives. We were raising about $1 billion to $1.5 billion worth of capital every year, investing in real estate, private credit, some of the things that we actually just chatted about. Through a back surgery, I woke up after back surgery during this window of time, and it's like I just saw the world different. And the idea of raising capital for another restaurant, another hotel, the list goes on and on. Nothing morally wrong with any of those things, but it wasn't something that got me excited. So ultimately, I was recovering from my back surgery, which reset everything. And I made my first investment, my wife and I, in affordable housing. You got to remember, I'm in traditional financial services, so this notion of, well, you can make money and do good, it makes no sense. My wife and I made the investment, and here's what I saw. Not only did we get to experience and see what this capital was doing to the residents of this community, and it's not just capital, it's also the management who is purposely running these properties this way. It was transforming their lives. In fact, one of them said, "I'm so excited to have people come to my house now." Just by being, and it's an apartment, but this was the message. But ultimately, so we saw the transformation there. Then I watched what the transformation did in my own heart, and I watched my wife. For the first time, my wife, she was always involved in the business, but for the first time, she was very much intrigued and wanted to get more involved. So that was in 2014, which set up this whole path of what does it mean to be a steward, not just on the charitable side, but on the investment side. And so we started Common Good Capital to go straight into the heart of the financial services. We work with wealth advisors, registered investment advisors all around the United States, bringing them, encouraging them to think about what does it mean to be a steward of their investment capital. Out of that, Fortis Green, actually my brother and I started Common Good Capital together. He's got a 15-year track record in Africa. He decided to go back to Africa because he felt called to, and that's Fortis Green, and we'll talk a little bit more about it.
Absolutely. So let's jump into our journey to Africa. So as I mentioned, my colleague came back super excited about this interaction she had with Jeff and signed us up to head to Africa for 7 days and 6 nights and spend time really walking projects and meeting people, meeting the community and understanding how this social good is actually making a difference. And so I just remember that trip for me was transformative. It's one thing to see and hear things in the news or in the media. It's another thing to actually walk the grounds and to see it with your own 2 eyes and to feel the spirit of the people and the spirit of the projects. And so I would love for you to share a little bit about the very first project we saw. It was in Rwanda. It was the hydro farm and the impact work that project is doing for the community.
Yeah, but before we go there, so you need to recognize at that time, so this was October. There was actually, has anybody heard of the Marburg virus? Well, I didn't know anything about it, but guess what? There are all these alerts. Marburg virus was going on. So here I am leading this, and I've got wealth advisors, and like, should we go or should we not go? But what you need to get credit for is her and some other said, we absolutely want to go. We're actually going to go risk potentially getting this disease. Now the reality is we felt like it was safe, otherwise we would have done it. But you risked to do this yourself. So to be commended, and at some point I'd love to understand, why would you take that? Why would you go to Africa? Why would you do this? Because there is risk in that. Not that Africa is a risk, but that specifically the virus. Let me actually fast forward here. So I think this is what you're talking about.
Yes.
So has anybody heard of run-of-the-river hydropower? It is a beautiful thing, and it will blow you away when you understand that this God-given power that's sitting out there flowing can produce power for thousands of people and transform their life. So let me just describe what it is briefly. You basically take a stream or a river, and you don't dam it like the Hoover Dam. You divert it, and you divert it into this what's called a diversion channel. And that channel probably is no more than 8 feet wide, probably 8 to 10 feet deep. The water goes in there, and then you take it to its highest point. So we literally, I didn't, but you build these concrete channels, take it to its highest point where it pools just a little bit, and then you see this penstock powerhouse. The water goes through those penstocks, goes into that powerhouse. You see the turbines right there. Turns the turbine, sends power out to the community, to the grid, and voila, you now have a sustainable power source. Meanwhile, the water goes back into the river, cleaner and at the same pH, at the same temperature as it was above the stream. That's right. And so the impact that has to a community is staggering. I could give you multiple examples, but you have to get yourself to this point, because we take it for granted. When you go home, your light's going to come on. When you go to to work, your computer's going to turn on. Think about if you have and this is a true story, you have a creamery. You've got milk that people are bringing to you, and voila, you have no power for 2 weeks. Guess what happens? It's devastating. So here, for them to have safe too, but cheap, affordable, consistent access to power is revolutionary, from households to businesses to churches to schools. The list goes on. And then in Africa, there's such a we mindset. So for example, at this project, what we have actually done is gone in and created access to clean water for the residents as well. Why? It's just good business. So that's an example of one of the projects that we would own. I'd be curious, you saw it for the first time. What did it do to you the first time you saw it?
Well, when I saw this project for the first time, I mean, again, just the idea that you could take that water and then ultimately power up hundreds of thousands of, it just blew my mind that, why haven't we thought about this before? It's one of those, and so, for me, not only do we think about what this has done for your work, but the actual people that live in Africa. I think about the one lady who talked about, the fact that now having power, she has access to internet. And internet can now, give her access to education. And that can now get her access to more money, right? And so it's a trickle effect that's so positive. And to think that water, that our beautiful resource was able to do that. And, now not only being able to take that water and power, but then to turn it into clean water, it's a beautiful thing. So let's talk about the other project that we had a chance to see as well. I think we went to several. We went to a solar farm as well, but we also went to see a beautiful tea farm.
Yes.
And that story, it was super powerful.
So this is in Kenya, and I'm sorry, I'm looking down here, so it's hard for me to reference for you all up there. Actually, there you are in the middle of the screen. That's you at Kiriti Tea.
Oh, that is
me. And in fact,
that is me.
Straight from Africa, I've got 2 pouches of tea. So let me.
It's the good stuff, y'all.
So let me ask a couple questions for some tea directly from Africa. The next billion people anticipated to grow here on the globe, what percentage of them will come from Africa? 75, lower. 50%.
All right,
50.
You got it. All right, yeah. Yes. That's right.
Sorry about that.
No problem.
Yeah, 50% of all of the population growth for the next billion is anticipated to be in Africa. So I would tell you is, if we don't understand Africa from a political standpoint, from an economic standpoint, you don't really have a global perspective on what's going on. So let's go to this tea factory. So this picture, can you see the rolling hills with the green in front of it? The green, all that green in front of it is tea. Those are tea leaves. So what happened was we have a series of run-of-the-river hydro that is all connected together in a mini-grid. And this mini-grid serves probably 1 million to 2 million people. So this is not something small. It's multiple. It's a power plant, but multiple of them connected. And the major off-taker of this power is Kiriti Tea Factory. So they've been around for 50 years, but one of the challenges they have is consistent power. So right now, well, not right now, historically, they've had power from the utility company, from Africa, and then they have a huge diesel generator backup. Well, if power goes out, diesel kicks on. From an environmental standpoint, it's horrible. From a cost standpoint, it's horrible. So we set up and said, hey, would you all sign a long-term PPA, power purchase agreement, be the anchor for the majority of the energy? So they did that, and when we were there, I was there probably I've been there multiple times, but probably a year ago, we talked to one of the ladies in management, and she said, for the first time, we were able to pay bonuses to all of the growers, which is about 2,700 growers. Most of them are women. In fact, you'll see in this picture there, that is a woman, probably has some of them have children on the front. They are picking the tea. And all this is they get paid on their cell phone almost instantly. But what they say is when you see business doing well there, and you see money flowing, they literally can see the money flowing all the way down into the stores, all the way down to the schools. And in fact, I'm happy to report that they're in the process of looking to create another tea factory in the same area. I think it's 3 or 4 times the size, because they have access to power. That is some of the major impact they can have. This is not an investment pitch, but I think it's important to note, we are investing in this, yes, because we care about the community and we want to make a difference. But we also know if it is not a viable business model, it will not be sustainable and it will not last. So you really can have your cake and eat it too, which is a paradigm shift that most are still struggling to get around.
That's right. And I would say, Jeff, the other thing that I noticed that was really glaring was the youth, or the young population of workers. I would say, and help me with this stat, but 50% of Africa is under the age of 35, and they have the youngest workforce in the entire world, and that's only, so I noticed even at the power plants, I mean, these were young, next generation, just really learning the business. So I would love for you to share more about the next generation perspective.
Yeah, so Africa does have the youngest population in the world. They also are the fastest growing population. With that is amazing opportunities, but there are also some real challenges, because if you do not have meaningful employment, meaningful training for the youth, then you have the opportunity to go awry. But I will tell you, it's so exciting because, so my brother lives in Rwanda. If I were to take you all to Rwanda, you would be amazed at the beauty of it, especially given, you all probably know the history. So to come from the ashes to the beauty that they are, there are a whole network of for-profit, social entrepreneurs, nonprofits that really are working together to solve these big problems. And so I can just tell you, as somebody who's been there multiple times, who gets regular feedback from my brother that really is making a difference. But one of the mindsets we have to change for Americans specifically is that Africa is a charity. Most people will give from a charity perspective to Africa. Go over to Africa, they're grateful for that. But they want to be viewed as investable. They want to be viewed as, I have good ideas. I can build a business. And you watch, so Silicon Valley is actually now being replicated out in Kenya. There are some amazing companies that are being built, and the dignity of investing in people. Look, you need charity. Charity is a wonderful thing, but the dignity of saying, I believe in you, I'm going to invest in you because I think you're going to make a difference in your community, I think you're going to make profit, and I think you're going to make profit for investors as well. And then the last thing I'll say is, and part of the reason, my big why of why I'm doing this, not only in Africa but other stuff, is I know, there's a book out there you may have read, it says, where your treasure is, therefore your heart will be. So I know that if I can get somebody to invest in something or somebody to give to something, guess what happens? Their heart follows. So my brother in Africa, myself here, we are really trying to connect hearts to Africa through their use of capital, in this case, investment capital.
That's good. Talk to us about, so we also have, Africa's also very known for their coffee. So we've got some Kenya coffee here. So tell us about Question Everything, a woman-owned business.
Yeah, I wish I had done some homework on Question. I've been to Question Coffee, but I'll tell you a little bit about it. It is a group of women that oftentimes have come from not so great places, but are being empowered through business. In fact, we went and had coffee there and got that. This is in Rwanda. It's some of the best coffee you'll ever have. But talking to these women when we went, the joy in their faces, their hearts. We specifically asked them, tell us about what you do. They took us in this room. But here's just a simple example of coffee and what it's doing to transform the lives of these women. And then, look, every time I go to Africa, I've got a handful of people who say, I can't get this online. Will you get me some of this? And so in that small way, we're connecting Americans with Africa, all because of these women who are doing amazing work in this case, in Rwanda.
That's good. Well, we'll wrap up with our passions, right? Okay. So clearly we see what you're passionate about, Jeff. As you think about the way forward, right, as you look at some of the things that you and your brother are working on for 2025 and beyond, share with us about any particular passions that you are really focused on to continue to drive this movement.
Yeah, so Common Good Capital, which is the company that I run, we not only work with Fortis Green, which I'm part of that, but we've also done stuff in affordable housing. My wife and I have personally invested in businesses that are run by or hire formerly incarcerated or returning citizens. So if you want to get specific, for me, and I could go, we're working on a regenerative farming fund right now out of California. That is phenomenal in and of itself. But what's near and dear to my heart, besides all that, is I have a deep passion for men and women who have been behind bars. And so one of the things that in fact, it's one of my takeaways from today, we have been exploring ways to own the real estate that nonprofits need and are currently using for transitional housing and services for men and women who are being released from prison. So metaphorically, I would love to be out there, raising capital to have people come alongside from an investment perspective, but putting their capital and helping men and women who are returning back into society have a place to live and also get services that are needed in that process. But I want to know, what are you passionate about?
No, that's good. Well, we'll wrap. My passion, obviously, is impact and doing social good. And most importantly, I would say, for me, it's the next generation. It's making sure that we're setting up our children and our children's children to be able to truly be the stewards. Because, our matriarchs and our patriarchs, especially here, we're getting older. And so, if we are not properly setting up our next generation, then we're doing ourselves a disservice. And so I would say, that's a huge passion for me, and being able to go and see all those beautiful young people in Africa really just drove that passion even further to know that I want to be on this assignment with you.
Well, if you can get the next generation to do this, to invest not just from a me mindset, right, to invest for a we mindset, you're going to see hearts get connected through their capital, and the world will be a much better place. So,
absolutely.
However I can help you, I'd love to.
Thank you, Jeff. Everyone, please give me and Jeff a round of applause.